My name is Venus Morris Griffin. I am from Augusta, Georgia. I live in Augusta, Georgia for the last 30 years. I am 49 years old. I'll be 50 in March. I have 7 children ranging from 25 to 5. I've given birth to all 7. And I'm a real estate agent.
You do not look a day over 20. I want to know what you're eating. So tell us your story.
Well,
where does your story begin?
Thank you. Yes. So my earliest memory as a child was watching my mother's fingernails. And if they were to start turning blue, then, I was to call 911. And I just remember growing up in just, really not good circumstances. My mother was a wonderful person, but she struggled with drug addiction, prescriptions, and alcoholism my whole life. And, as a young child, I watched her go in and out of rehabs and mental hospitals, and, from one guy to another guy. I remember, just getting up in the morning for school and just having blankets over the doors and having one room that we kept warm, and, scared to invite friends over because when you turn the light on in the kitchen, like roaches are going everywhere. And I just, it was just a really tough childhood. My mother married at 15 and had 3 children. I was the youngest of the 3. My brother never seemed to break the cycle. He was in and out of boys' homes most of his youth and was incarcerated. I think it was in high school in a maximum security prison for, I don't even remember, burglary or something of the sort. My sister also, she was a wonderful person, but she lost her children at a very young age. And the last time I saw her, she was in a mental hospital trying to convince me that she worked there. And she hasn't, her boys still come to see me and her grandchildren, but she hasn't ever met the grandchildren or really seen her boys in probably 20 something. I mean, since they were little. But, all my life I just worked. I thought, okay, if I can just figure out how to break the cycle, then I'll be okay. And so, I didn't really know how to navigate through life because everyone around me was so dysfunctional. I had a stepfather who was a really bad alcoholic that we were all terrified of. The guy that I thought was my father, was schizophrenic, and, you'd go in his house. So I'd go to visit, and he'd have 10 locks going up and down the doors. And I found out later at 15, I think I was 17. I met my biological father, who my mother had an affair with her boss. And I met him for the first and last time when I was around 17 years old. So, I said, I just have to get out of this awful environment. So I to, graduate high school. I went to summer school and took an extra class. So I graduated high school in 3 years. I switched high schools, I think like 7 times in 3 years. And then I graduated and, really, from the age of 14 on was on my own. I would live with friends. I lived with my mother. I'd live with my sister, really on the verge of homelessness, really at any moment. And when I got to college, I worked 2 jobs. I put myself through school. My mother helped me financially the first year, and then her alcoholism regressed to the point where she was not even functional. So I just remember I worked 2 jobs and put myself through school, and I met the love of my life. I graduated from the University of South Carolina, and I thought, I've done this. I've figured this out. I've met this amazing man, and we married shortly after college, and I guess we dated about a year and a half, and the love of my life he was, I thought. And about 17 years after we were married, I get a phone call in the middle of the night, and it was from this prostitute who was blackmailing him. And she called me and she says, I don't know you, but I'm calling to tell you that your husband has been cheating on you for years. And, we've blackmailed him and we've taken everything that you have. We've drained all your bank accounts, your kids' accounts, you have nothing. And so, my first reaction was like, there's no way this is true. This lady is out to get her family. My husband and I went to church every Sunday together. We sat on the front row, and I was a youth minister. He coached the football team, the basketball team. We were the PTO presidents. We had lunch together every day. So I thought this lady, this prostitute, was really just trying to extort money from us, keeping in mind, we had 6 children, and I think my husband made $100,000 a year. So that's a lot of money, but it's really not a lot when you have 6 children. So we weren't, wealthy by any means because we had such a large family. But, I just didn't believe her because I never had any, really anything to suggest that he would do something like that. So I asked her, I said, would you mind if I met with you? It was really late, middle of the night. And she said, sure. So I'll never forget, at the time, I had just had a baby. I was still nursing. So my husband was out of town. I had a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And I was a stay-at-home, wasn't working. I think I just got my real estate license to try to start maybe making a little extra so we could, take vacations and that kind of stuff and not be such a financial, burden on the family. And so my son's like, sure, Mom. I said, well, call me if the baby wakes up. And so I go down there and meet with her. And, all of these things are going through your mind because you're like, okay, this is not happening. It's like you're like out of your body. There's no way that he did these things. And I was determined to save him and to prove his innocence. I didn't even call him because I just knew, I don't know. So drove up to the hotel room. It was this little awful hotel off of Washington Road. And I'll never forget, knocking on the door, and this very young girl comes to the door. And, I'm kind of small, but she looked like she was half my size. And, she's fidgeting from her head to toe, and just, you could tell she was just on something, but she seemed kind of normal, but on something. And so I go into the room, and I'll never forget this. I'm still thinking that she's lying, but then she gets her telephone and she starts showing me all of these photos. And the photos are of my husband in, compromised positions without clothes on. And at that point I knew that she wasn't lying, that he had done these things. And so it's the weirdest part of all of this is I'm looking at this young girl in the eyes, and you would think that I would just like hate her. But all I could do is it's like we were connected, our souls were connected. I just felt this tremendous sadness because women don't sell their bodies and give their self to people like that unless they're tormented and something's happened to them. And so we had this strong friendship and connection. It's the strangest thing. And I just felt forgiveness and love. And, I just remember I can't even put words to describe how I felt towards her because it doesn't make sense when I rationally look at it. She just really took my whole life from me as I knew it. She didn't do it, but, and so she showed me these pictures, and then she turns the phone around to me, and it's my husband calling on her phone to try to stop her from telling me. And I'll never forget, I answered the phone, and I just said, how could you do this to our family and our children? And of course I was devastated. What do you do with that? I say, like, your life can change in 10 seconds, and you got to decide what's going to happen to you with that. So strangely as it is, flat broke, she's just told us they've taken everything we have. She feels this connection to me, I can tell as well, and a respect for me. And I give her $100 check because she can't get back to Atlanta to turn herself in for something that she had done. And over the next few days, I said, don't cash the check. I need 3 days. I got a closing and I'll have money in my account 3 days, but I don't have $100 in there right now. And so, I mean, that too, I'm like, who in their right mind gives $100 to somebody? They don't have it. They've got 6 kids, but I just, God gives you these little whispers that this is the right thing to do and everything will happen right for you. And I just felt like, that was the right thing to do. So the next 3 days, can I cash a check? Can I cash? No. And then finally, okay, the money's there. You can cash the check. And that's the last time I ever saw or spoke to her. But I'll never forget that night driving back, and I'm going to Washington Road, and I'm like, I'm going to fight for my marriage because he's done some awful things. And I mean, it's hard as a woman, especially when it's something sexual. But I'm like, it's no different than alcoholism, drug addiction, sex addiction is just more personal. And I said, I'm sitting here having all these scenarios go through my mind, and I'm like, anybody can say they're going to be a good wife when it's all good, right? When everything is perfect. But you see really who you are during the tough times. And I said, you know what? I'm going to show my children that we don't quit. And I'm going to help my husband through this, whatever is going on, through this awful addiction, no matter what. And so, long story short, he's got wonderful parents. His parents were like floored too. And they sent him this sexual rehab in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And while he was there, some other things came out that he did that were really, really bad. And he took a few lie detector tests, and he failed them. And after that happened, the doctor contacted the Department of Social Services, who contacted the district attorney. And over the next 4 to 6 months, he was tried and convicted and sent to prison for 45 years. And so that's when my life changed. I'm like, okay, what do you do? I've got a husband that I love dearly. I filed for divorce when he failed the lie detector test, because it was something that would compromise my children's safety. I don't mention what it is because it would ruin your podcast. And, this isn't really about what he did. This is what you do under bad circumstances. But, what do you do? I'm driving home from the courthouse, and I'm like, okay, how do I sit my 6 children down and tell them their dad basically is going to be in the prison the rest of his life? I mean, he's got 45 years. He's got to serve 21. And I'm broke. I'm hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I lived in a 2-bedroom place, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom little cottage, and had no job. I just got my real estate license, and I'll never forget, my divorce attorney said to me, Venus, I know you like this real estate thing, but you need to get a real job, because in case you don't know, everybody's getting out of the real estate market. It's 2009. It's the recession. The good agents are leaving, and you don't get child support from prison. And my family, they all lived in trailers. They're great. I have a great, great family, but they're of little means. And so I just remember thinking, okay, oh my God, what do you do with this? And so I drove home from the courthouse, and I'll never forget, I sat all 6 children down in a circle in our living room. And I told them, I said, the first thing we are going to do as a family, I says, we're going to forgive your dad. And I said, we are never, ever going to speak bad of him. And I am going to pick myself up. I really don't know what that means, but I know my work ethic, and I know what I've overcome already from my childhood to putting myself through college. And I am going to take care of you. And I don't know what that means, but I know that, with God and, hard work, and you can figure it out. I didn't know how you're going to figure it out. And I'll never forget my 15-year-old saying, Mom, he said, it doesn't matter what happens to us. You know, we have each other, and I'm going to help you raise my brothers and sisters. So he said to me, he said, you go out and you do what you need to do to take care of our family, and I'm going to help with my siblings. And so we started our journey that way. And I just, you know, I didn't really know what to do other than, you know, work hard and just put it in God's hands. I said, okay, so the first thing I did, I committed to my family, is that first year my ex-husband was in prison. I got all 6 children up I got up every morning. I went running for 5 miles because I knew that I needed endorphins to help my mind, because it was hard and I was scared. And I had nothing, you know, and I knew that if I didn't pick the game up, that my kids would pay the price. And so I ran every morning 5 miles. And then I got all of my children out of the bed and I fixed them breakfast. I took them to church. We went every day for the first year before school at 7 in the morning. And then I dropped them off at school. I'm so sorry. And then I would go to work, you know, and I didn't have any business at the time at all. And I would put on a suit, and I only had like 2 cheap suits, and I would rotate those suits, and I would get up every day and go to work like I was this big wig person. And I just remember, you know, I would read my son said to me, Mom, you research everything you can research, and you know, show that you'll be an expert in your field in 5 years. And so I was researching every day, how do you become a real estate agent? How do you make money in a recession, you know, when the whole country is falling down, and support 6 kids? And so I just did that. I would ride around, I would look for doors, I would knock on doors, and I would not beg people, but I would just tell them if they would give me a chance to sell their house, that I would be the best agent that they'd ever seen. And I would do what I told them I was going to do, and then they would refer me. And then I started becoming very successful quickly. And you know another thing that I committed to is I didn't want to have all of these children and maybe working crazy hours and them think that money was more important to them, and that I'd love them. And so that's really kind of a hard balance sometimes as a single mom. And so I committed my assistant. My first year I was so broke. My assistant was my best friend, and I could not even pay her. She worked for free for the first year, and then I called her up the second year, and she was amazing. She's like, Venus, I'll feed your family. You're not going to go under. You know, I'm here for you. Thankfully, she didn't have to feed my family because, you know, I became successful. And but I committed every night to having dinner with my kids, all 6 kids. We would sit around the table, and from 6:30 to 7:30 or whatever time, we would have dinner. I would make dinner, and we would go around. We'd say a good thing or not so good thing, and then I'd go back to work. You know, I was literally working like 70 hours a week, and you don't, when you're starting out in sales, you don't get a paycheck, so you just got to keep on working. But I knew that I had first to put oxygen mask on myself before I could put it on my kids. And so that's why I worked out, and, I believe in a higher power. So I wanted to, I didn't know what to do, but I just knew as long as I could look up, I could get up. And so every day I just got up, and I decided, to not be a victim. And I decided I forgave my husband, because you're not defined by the worst thing you do.
It's not every day I interview people and I'm lost for words. Your story is just incredible.
You would think it would not be hard.
It's been 10 years. Story.
It's been 10 years and it's still very difficult. Because what I don't want to do, like when I tell these stories, it's not about what's happened to me, because I tell people I'm no one special. I'm just a normal person. who just said, okay, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to get up no matter how hard it is. I'm going to do the best I can do. And it's going to work out. And if you know that, and it's like when you take off in an airplane, you know, there's going to be turbulence when you get up. But if you keep working every day, you're going to get smooth. And I just knew if I kept working, and I would reflect on my childhood, and I just knew if I kept working that it would be okay. And it was, you know, my first year in the business, I made, you know, less than $20,000 or $20,000 in real estate. The least important thing about me is my income. So I want to be very clear. You are not more important or more successful because of the dollars you make. But I share it because, you know, it's important to see that you've got this little girl who knows nobody. I'm in a town. I have no connections. I come from dirt. And, you know, my first full year in the business, I made 6 figures. By year 7, I was making over $1 million a year. And now, you know, I am very blessed and, you know, continue to make 7 figures. But again, I only share that to say, you know,